All right, welcome. This is the debate on the Premier League preview show. So we've done all kinds of interesting topics, like I said, today we are doing an African flavor in the context of the Premier League. We're asking a very simple question. Who is the greatest African player in Premier League history? Who is the greatest African player in Premier League history? Several Africans have played this league, starting from way back in the early 90s when the likes of Lucas Radebe, he joined quite late. Peter and Lovu, the mid-90s, Tony Eboa, you had all the others joining. And then as time passed by, you had the bigger names showing up. Michael Essien showed up. Yaya Toure showed up. Thierry Henry is not African. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang showed up. Mo Salah these days, flying the flag of Egypt. And then Didier Drogba himself, one of the most iconic players of the Premier League. So we're asking, who is the greatest African player in Premier League history? Guys, this is a tough one, isn't it? We've had so many exciting Africans. Jude, so many exciting Africans, to be honest. Very, very good African players.
We have, but Koranteng could start and just tell us what he thinks about this. But I mean, it's pretty clear for everybody to know who the greatest in the Premier League. Who? It goes without saying if you are being honest. I think Didier Drogba stands out to amongst a list of really elite players.
And you can't stand out.
I know for a fact, and I believe beyond every doubt that he is the person you want to go to if you are looking at the best or the greatest African in the Premier League. And see, let me just lay this robust foundation so we are all on the same page. When you talk about Drogba as a player, right, he's not only the best in the Premier League or the best African we've seen in the Premier League. He's out there as the second best player or African in world football we've seen. You see, sometimes nostalgia has a way of letting us have some exaggerated sense of certain players. I remember a conversation I had with a friend sometime, and I asked him, there's someone around my age, and I asked him, who do you think is the best? And he started mentioning Abedi Pele, Roger Milla. I was like, hey, have you seen Roger Milla play yourself? You see, but sometimes because
it doesn't mean that it doesn't change anything.
Sometimes because of all of these things we've seen in the past and certain videos we've seen, there's a tendency to really have an exaggerated belief of what a player used to be at the time. And even sports psychologists say it now, that the level of activity and pressure in the sports now, in modern football, that's from the early 2000s up until now, was really different from those days.
So, but I can also counter-argue and say that the amount of pressure in the time we are talking about was also quite huge. Of course, things evolve with time.
Exactly, and this is not me saying. I could pull out the research to show you. So it's we need to put that context in perspective. Okay, now, going on to the reasons why I believe Drogba is the best to have done it in the Premier League, and by extension, England. When I say England, then I'd want to add all the other trophies that we see in English football, the League Cup, the FA Cup.
Okay, but I'm talking about the Premier League. So let's zone in.
I'll zone in the Premier League, which even makes my case much better if you ask me. Now, there are so many reasons, but I could just pick only 8, unfortunately. I didn't want to bore your viewers with going on why Drogba is the best in the Premier League. But see, you take a player who's played 10 finals. But
in the Premier League, there aren't any finals.
No, I'm making a point as to why he's the best in England and by extension.
No, can you tell us why he's the best in the Premier League? You want to get to that point.
Down. I mean, it's pretty much...
Understanding the question is part of the argument.
It's pretty much obvious. And you don't get to be the best in the Premier League without all of these other factors. You get it? So we'll bring all of these things into perspective.
So let's talk about the Premier League. All the other things are accessories.
Now, see, take a random guest list of people you'd want to put in the same category as Didier Drogba. And you'd want to mention Yaya Toure. You'd want to mention Mohamed Salah.
In terms of African players.
In terms of African players, like the debate question says. And if you're a little generous, the likes of Michael Essien and Mikel Obi come in. But I think the two contenders, the big names that come up in any conversation, should be Mohamed Salah, Yaya Toure, and maybe Sadio Mane. Now let's look at what the stats and the numbers is for these players involved. Now you have Didier Drogba, who in 2007 was the best striker in the world. You'd want to ask me how this is possible. The numbers speak for itself.
Okay, so there you have Drogba's numbers: 254 Premier League appearances, 104 goals, 55 assists, 2 golden boots, 4 Premier League titles, 4 penalties scored, 6 free kicks scored. How many of them were against Arsenal?
He had about 11 goals against Arsenal. But that's even just by the side. Like back to the point I was making. In 2007, he was the best striker in the world. And this was at the time we had the likes of Shevchenko, we had the likes of Samuel Eto'o, we had the likes of all of these other great players we've seen in world football. How was he the best? Because according to Ballon d'Or rankings, it was Kaká who was number 1. Yeah. Then Lionel Messi came in number 2. Cristiano came in number 3. None of these players were strikers. The 4th person on the list was Didier Drogba. Okay. So you really can't argue it anyway.
So you're saying that by extrapolation, you're saying that because Drogba finished 4th in the Ballon d'Or ranking,
exactly,
and he was the first striker to appear.
He was the best striker in the world football at the time. And it doesn't come better than that. Considering the kind of football we saw at the time, target man, long ball, we don't see a lot of this now because you want coaches passing the ball here and there. But clearly, he was ahead of his game for so many years. Now, you want to look at the closest person to come in the Premier League, get shouts for Ballon d'Or. That's Mohamed Salah in his best season ever at Liverpool. His closest ranking on the Ballon d'Or was 6th. And
who are the players ahead of him?
Then the normal
big two.
Then I've forgotten the order of the list.
Luka Modric.
It was Luka Modric.
Exactly, okay. But he finished 6th. That was in 2017-2018.
Okay.
2019-2020, he also finished 5th. So the closest he's been to on the Ballon d'Or rankings for Mohamed Salah is the 5th position. I don't want to mention a player like Yaya Toure. Yaya Toure, guess what? In top 10 since 2000 to 2020, has none at all. So it's really outrageous for me when people want to sort of
those are Yaya Toure's numbers.
Exactly. So 62 goals, clearly not impressive. 32.
But the point is that he was a midfielder. And he played in a Man City team where they had Sergio Aguero.
He wasn't going to
at
least let the assist show.
But in his position, look at it, Jude. 62 goals and 32 assists.
We've seen the likes of Frank Lampard, who as a midfielder even outscored Drogba. So Yaya Toure playing alongside.
But Lampard played in a position that allowed him to score.
You just allow me. So Yaya Toure with the likes of Aguero, David Silva, and all of those star-studded players around him does not have an excuse for these poor numbers in terms of the assists, especially. Now,
so you're saying that Drogba is okay?
Drogba
Just make
is
your
the
final
man because
point, then I hear from Duncan.
he's made the numbers speak for itself. I mean, in some 2 or 3 games, Salah will definitely overtake him. But for the longest period of keeping the record as the highest goals scorer, highest assists, I think it deserves mention. Now, let me just run through these things quickly. So the number 1 is longevity. See, for all of these players in 9 seasons, Salah has played 8 seasons in England, 3 at Chelsea, 5 at Arsenal. He's still
5 at Liverpool.
Sorry, 5 at Liverpool. Sorry, forgive me for that. He's still been outscored by Drogba, who I must add was a late bloomer. You all know this. Drogba started peaking age 28, age 29, and with all of the...
It's our fault.
That shows the extraordinary talent about the player. And for all its worth, see the numbers he's still churning. So his longevity as a player, 9 seasons, 104 goals for Chelsea, went to Turkey, went to China, came back and won the league again. Now you have his big game player, 10 finals, 9 goals, 8 trophies.
I get that, but
I'm just making a point.
The point is this. If you mention the finals,
no, because
in the Premier League, technically there aren't any finals.
And he played for an English club. So
I'm just saying that. That's okay. But I'm saying in the Premier League there aren't any finals.
I could even point out the 2009-2010 Chelsea versus Wigan Athletic game.
Yes.
Chelsea only needed a win. United and when we were breathing on their necks of Carlo Ancelotti and his boys, but it took Didier Drogba to step up, get the goal, get the penalty, and ensure Chelsea had a comfortable win. So that's big game players stepping up on when the matters most. I could go on about it the night in Munich,
but I want
to leave that because
big game plaudits. To be brutally honest, and maybe I'm not the one in the debate, but in the Premier League, yeah, he did score big goals.
He scored a lot of big goals.
So you made your point. Didier Drogba
goals. Let me just go through.
Because we are running
so
out
there's
of time.
Also his 4-time champion. Now you want to ask if anybody or any name should come up. You'd also want to how many Premier League titles has the person won. You'd want to mention Salah. Salah has only 1, and that's the same as Arsenal's Laurent. And you'd also argue that Laurent, as a player, probably won the most prestigious Premier League title because he played in the defense that was unbeaten the whole of the season. So if you ask me, that's also shouts for being the best in the league. But clearly, Drogba has more.
Drogba won 4.
And he has his leadership And you also don't want to take his off-field qualities away from him. He showed it in the league. He showed it throughout his career as a Chelsea player. So I find
when you put that all together,
when you put that all together, considering the fact that he's finished the 4th best player in the world and by extension the best striker in the world, how good does it come? How good does it come again?
Okay, so Duncan makes a case for Didier Drogba. Very interesting case. Daniel, I don't know if you have a counter.
The greatest player in Premier League history is Yaya Toure. It's not debatable.
The greatest African
player in Premier League history is Yaya Toure.
He has 32 assists.
It's not debatable at all. Didier Drogba. What position did Drogba play?
Drogba was a striker.
What's the job of a striker?
Scored goals.
He's supposed to score goals.
He had Bosingwa and the likes assisting.
When you were talking, I was quiet.
You have to add all of those things.
Let him finish.
Okay. How many? You said Drogba's job is to score goals.
He was. Yes, he was a
254 appearances. He scored just 104 goals.
It's not just
Jude.
If you do the breakdown, you see how disappointing that is. Drogba won the Golden Boot twice, and those are the only seasons where he scored 20 plus goals. Shows you how poor he was at scoring
29 goals a season.
In all other seasons, he was playing, starting, prominent in Chelsea's team throughout the season. Of course, but he was outscored in all the other 7 seasons he was at Chelsea. He was outscored by Frank Lampard, by Anelka, by all the other players around
Africa
him.
In January,
so he was Chelsea striker, supposed to score the goals.
But he did 104.
104 in 254 appearances. And you see,
but he score in every game.
Nathan, this is a game of comparison. Okay, so maybe for Drogba this is impressive, but show me Mohamed Salah's numbers.
Okay, do you have Mohamed Salah's numbers? Maybe you can have some Salah.
Salah has played 165 games. That is 100 games less than Didier Drogba, and he's just 2 away from Drogba. Salah is a winger.
It's actually just one goal.
Just 1 goal away from Didier Drogba.
You mentioned the assists.
So can we? No, but if your job was to score goals. And you could get 104 in 254 appearances across 9 seasons. And only the 2 seasons out of the 9, you scored 20 plus goals. In all other 7 seasons, you were outscored by your teammates. There was a season where he scored as low as 5 goals. Salah will never do that in his life. Salah scores 5 goals a month. So, look, I'm saying that in terms of actual numbers and in terms of impact, in terms of footballing impact, when it comes to the job of a striker, let's not bring Didier Drogba. There's this certain aura he has around him. But aura doesn't play football. And that aura is, and he said it himself, it's all down to nostalgia. And you see, at the end of the day, when everybody finishes and we lay their numbers and their achievements down on the table, that is when people start to appreciate.
It's interesting you should make that point. I remember reading a book on the history of the Premier League, evolution of the Premier League, and the author, the Venerable Michael Cox, made that same point about Drogba and the myth around him, and he was breaking down Drogba and some of the things you discover.
No, but it's very 55 assists a season.
Okay, Jude, let's you've made that. I was just struck by that revelation.
Anyway, if you even look at Mohamed Salah's assist numbers for somebody who is considered
strike the
32, Drogba had what, 55 in 254.
As a centre forward, not a winger.
Okay, so I'm outscoring you as a winger. You've got quite a few assists
as a centre forward.
As a centre forward, of course, but you've played 100 games more. 100 is quite a number of games.
That's a goal in every 2 games.
But that is not my concern.
Okay,
just to show you that that's in terms of numbers, in terms of footballing impact. Didier Drogba, of course, we all have respect for him, but aura doesn't play football. You see, he has that aura because of nostalgia.
He has 4 Premier League titles.
4 Premier League titles.
Has 1.
Interesting. 4 Premier League titles, but human beings, individuals do not win Premier League titles on their own. It's a team thing. And if you look at Mohamed Salah, nobody needs to tell you that one Liverpool title in 30 years was mainly down to Mohamed Salah's goals. He's broken the record for a single season in the Premier League, 32 goals. Didier Drogba was a striker. He never did that.
He scored 29.
He didn't do 32.
And had 13 assists.
In terms of mathematics.
In that season.
Nathan, in terms of mathematics, I'm very sure 32 is more than 29.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Now let's focus on Yaya Toure. Let me tell you why I feel Yaya Toure is the best, and it's undebatable. Look, in terms of the team he walked into, this was a team that had no winning mentality. He came in 2010. This was a team fresh with money. They had no winning mentality. We all know the importance of building a team culture. We all know the importance of building that winning mentality and going on to win a title. This guy came in 2010. And one of the beautiful things about Yaya Toure, David Silva said himself that the only reason he signed for Manchester City was because Yaya told him, I'm going there. And then David Silva said, okay, fine. If you are going there, I'm following you. David Silva walked. Yaya Toure walked into this Manchester City team with no pedigree, nothing. First season, he wins an FA Cup. Best player in that competition, wins the FA Cup for them. If you look at Yaya Toure's contribution,
in the semi-final and the final.
In the final. If you look at Yaya Toure's contribution, okay, in terms of Manchester City's success, you cannot.
But in that
your
season,
life,
they didn't win the league.
They didn't win the league.
So if I say that Drogba's cup wins, if we put them out, we are looking at mainly the Premier League.
Yes, of course, that is the argument. And I repeat again, when you were talking, I was quiet. So let's just try and respect ourselves. Look, Yaya Toure, the following season, what does he do after helping Manchester City out of nothing? A team that has won nothing in years, win an FA Cup in that first season. Second season, he wins the Premier League title. Best player in that team to win the Premier League title. And in fact, he was so instrumental. And when Jude talks about big goals, he refers to caps. The Premier League, they play finals, they play semi-finals.
I mentioned the final game of the season.
I think we are talking about the Premier League, right? That's what the question. Can you read? Yeah, thank you. So, when we are talking about the Premier League, you talk about that 4-4 game Man United went to draw at Everton. The next two games Manchester City played, that was Yaya Toure. He scored against Newcastle, a very important goal against Newcastle. He was brilliant in that game against Man United where Company scored a winning goal. Absolutely brilliant, top-class player. That season, best Manchester City player. Went on the following season to top score for Manchester City. And you see, it's very interesting. I always say that the only numbers that, for me, and I think it makes perfect sense, is brilliant. The only, when it comes to Premier League player analysis, when you are using numbers to judge, the only one you don't need to put into context is numbers between strikers. Your job is to score. So if you're a striker, your job is to score. So your goals come first before anything else. But for all other positions, there's context to it. Yeah, Toure, and you remember, if you watch the Premier League, I really don't need to explain this to you. He was playing a deep role. He was advanced when Manchester City needed. And that's the class of a player. Because they had David Silva in that advanced position. He mentioned stars. But when Manchester, they had Samir Nasri. They had from people that you expect to be able to change games when it was necessary. But Yaya Toure was always that guy. When Manchester City backs against the wall, when they needed somebody, bring in De Jong, tell Yaya Toure, bank forward. And he always did the job. You look at the type of goals he scored. He was brilliant in deep lying midfield. He was brilliant attacking. He played centre-back at times. His passing was almost the best in the league I've seen. His vision, brilliant. His strength. Yaya Toure's impact on that Manchester City. And the Manchester City faithfuls, they know it. They know how good he was. 3 Premier League titles for a team that was not channeled or programmed to win anything. From 2010
3
to
Premier League
2018.
titles in 9 seasons, as against 4 Premier League titles.
I don't think anybody comes close when it comes to impact on a team. Didier Drogba is
even amongst
he's a myth. He's an aura. But aura doesn't
even amongst Man City faithfuls, when we're looking for players to really acknowledge and feel their impact in the club, get statutes for them, Company's name came up. I'm making a point.
Considered a great striker.
I'm making a point. I'm making a point.
When you play 9 seasons and only score 20 plus goals in 2 out of
and he scored 29 in the most
remarkable season. How do you counter? For example,
that is not longevity. That is not consistency.
So Didier scored 20 plus goals in what, 2 seasons?
Just 2 seasons.
2 seasons.
But it makes up for the assists. Look at the assists as a striker. So it tells you that he wasn't just about the
and the numbers have shown the team as well. It's so many occasions. We all did mathematics here. I'm very glad we all did mathematics. And if you compare Danny Drogba's assist numbers with Salah's assist numbers,
even at City, he didn't have a statue. Players like Company.
If you're watching us, you can continue the debate in your offices, in your homes, wherever it is. And you can ask yourself who the greatest African player in the history of the Premier League games. But that's how we wrap it up. Interesting debate from Daniel, from Jude. I'm sure we'll continue later.